What if the world you thought you knew about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle was built on a lie? What if millions of pounds, supposedly reserved for the ceremonial duties of a prince, were quietly redirected to fund Meghan's burgeoning media empire? It sounds like something out of a tabloid fantasy, but according to recent revelations, this could be closer to reality than anyone imagined. The whispers in the palace corridors, the cryptic mentions in leaked reports, and now alleged financial records exposed by insiders hint at a story so explosive that it has the potential to shake the foundations of the royal family as we know it. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine being a member of the most scrutinized family in the world. Every step you take, every smile, every gesture is dissected under the microscope of public opinion. For centuries, the royal family has lived under rules designed to maintain a sense of duty, propriety, and above all, accountability. Money is no exception. Trust funds, budgets for official engagements, and the allocations for charitable activities are meticulously monitored, meant to uphold centuries of protocol. Every penny has a purpose. Every transaction carries weight. And yet, the very people entrusted with these funds, people raised in the highest echelons of privilege and responsibility, may have quietly repurposed them for personal gain. The idea is almost unthinkable. And yet, here we are. In the heart of this storm sits Meghan Markle, a woman whose rise from Hollywood actress to influential media personality has captivated the world. Her charm, her poise, and her relentless drive for creative projects have been lauded as revolutionary by some and criticized as opportunistic by others. But what most people don't see are the financial mechanisms behind the glamour. Behind every streaming deal pitched, every production project initiated, there may have been a hidden backer, a backer no one expected. According to allegations, Prince Harry, her husband and a senior member of the royal family, could have quietly used restricted royal funds to bankroll these initiatives, effectively merging personal ambition with public trust. These claims are not just about money. They are about accountability, ethics, and betrayal. Royal funds are intended for duties, for engagements that support the monarchy and the public trust placed in it. They are not meant for launching a personal media empire or negotiating streaming deals in secret. To even imagine that a prince might divert millions in service of private ambitions is to confront the uncomfortable possibility that protocol, trust, and tradition might have been undermined from within. So, how did this all come to light? Enter Nacho Figueras, the man whose name is now inextricably linked to this unfolding financial mystery. Known in social circles as a polo champion and style icon, Figueras has allegedly become an unexpected whistleblower in a story that reads more like espionage than royal drama. Reports suggest he came across financial records indicating a series of transactions that do not conform to the strict regulations of royal funding. These documents allegedly reveal not just casual oversights, but a deliberate redirection of money to projects that had no connection to royal duties. One of the most shocking elements of this revelation is the sheer audacity of the alleged scheme. We are talking about millions of pounds, money earmarked for centuries-old traditions, public appearances, and charitable engagements, potentially being funneled quietly into the private media ventures of one couple. Imagine the conversations, the secrecy, the coded emails, and the discreet meetings that might have been necessary to keep such an operation hidden. The story is compelling not just because of the sums involved, but because of the boldness of the act itself. But it's not just about numbers. It's about perception, power, and the fragility of trust. The British royal family operates not merely as a monarchy, but as a symbol of stability, accountability, and moral authority. When allegations of financial impropriety emerge, they do more than raise eyebrows. They threaten the very credibility of the institution. Public opinion, always a delicate matter for the royals, becomes a force to reckon with. One misstep, one perceived betrayal of trust, and decades of public goodwill can unravel in a matter of hours. Yet, what makes this story even more gripping is the timing. Harry and Meghan stepped back from their formal royal duties, seeking independence and freedom from centuries of expectation. Their exit was framed as a move towards self-determination, a pursuit of personal happiness and professional opportunity. But if these allegations hold weight, it raises critical questions about the nature of that independence. Was it truly a quest for freedom, or was it a calculated move to gain access to funds that could fuel private ambitions? Were the royal protocols simply inconvenient roadblocks in a larger plan? The human element cannot be overlooked in this narrative. This is not just about money. It's about relationships strained under the weight of secrecy and ambition. Prince Harry, once celebrated as a rebellious figure carving out his path, now faces scrutiny not just from the public, but potentially from within the very institution he was born into. Meghan, simultaneously admired and vilified by different corners of the world, finds herself at the center of a financial maelstrom that she may or may not have orchestrated. Every public appearance, every media interview, every philanthropic statement now exists under the shadow of these allegations. And what about the ripple effect? Consider the people who were allegedly involved: executives at streaming platforms, advisors in the royal household, and insiders who may have witnessed unusual financial activity. If even a fraction of these claims are accurate, it suggests a web of complicity, miscommunication, and perhaps silent acquiescence. It's one thing to speculate about ambition. It's another to see the structural consequences of ambition executed in secrecy, with millions of pounds hanging in the balance. For the public, the curiosity is irresistible. Millions around the world are asking, how could this happen? Who knew? Was it a coordinated effort or a series of calculated risks? Could the royal oversight mechanisms have failed, or were they intentionally circumvented? And most importantly, what does this mean for the future of Harry and Meghan and the monarchy at large? This is where the emotional stakes come into sharp focus. We are not merely discussing finance. We are talking about trust, loyalty, and the delicate balance between duty and desire. The tension between personal ambition and public responsibility is a recurring theme in history, but few modern stories have played out on such a globally visible stage. The combination of celebrity, royalty, and alleged financial impropriety creates a narrative that is as riveting as it is controversial. And here's the kicker. The records, if they are authentic, point to a level of sophistication that is almost cinematic. We are not talking about casual overspending or minor accounting errors. We are talking about a strategic, deliberate channeling of funds, a carefully executed plan that, if exposed fully, could redefine how the world views one of the most famous couples on the planet. So what came first, the ambition or the access? Did Harry and Meghan see an opportunity and take it? Or were they simply navigating a system they believed they could reform in their favor? And what about the royal family? Aware, complicit, or blindsided? These questions are not rhetorical. They demand answers, and the answers, if revealed, promise to shock and captivate in equal measure. As we embark on this deep dive, consider the implications. Every move, every deal, every alleged transaction carries weight. The money is more than currency. It represents trust, privilege, and the delicate mechanics of one of the world's most scrutinized institutions. What happened behind the closed doors of Buckingham Palace, Kensington, and private boardrooms could forever alter public perception of Harry and Meghan, and potentially, the monarchy itself. But what makes this story truly compelling is not just the alleged diversion of funds, but the human drama intertwined with it. At the core, this is a story of ambition, secrecy, loyalty, and betrayal. It's about choices made under the glare of public scrutiny, the tension between personal dreams and institutional expectations, and the consequences of actions that ripple far beyond the immediate circle of those involved. By the end of this exploration, we will peel back the layers of secrecy, examine the evidence, and confront the uncomfortable truth that even those who seem untouchable are capable of actions that defy expectation. From leaked records to insider accounts, from media speculation to palace whispers, this story promises revelations that could redefine what the public thinks they know about Harry, Meghan, and the world they inhabit. And just when you think you've grasped the scale of this tale, there's another twist waiting. One that could make everything we've discussed so far seem like only the tip of the iceberg. Imagine being handed millions of pounds to carry out a job, with strict rules about exactly how you're allowed to spend it. Every transaction is monitored, every receipt scrutinized, every decision weighed against centuries of tradition. This is the world of the royal family's trust funds, a world where privilege meets responsibility in the most exacting way. At first glance, it may seem almost trivial. After all, who wouldn't want access to millions? But in the royal context, money is not just money. It is power, reputation, and accountability rolled into one. And according to allegations that have recently emerged, some of that money may not have stayed where it was supposed to. The royal trust is essentially a collection of funds set aside for specific purposes: official engagements, charitable activities, and expenses associated with the public duties of the royal family. These funds are tightly regulated. They are meant to maintain the dignity and function of the monarchy, not to support personal ventures or private enterprises. The funds come with strings attached. Auditors, advisors, and stewards are there to ensure nothing is misused. And yet, the allegations suggest that Prince Harry may have redirected portions of these funds to support projects that had nothing to do with his royal duties, funneling money to help Meghan Markle establish her media presence. Understanding the royal trust requires appreciating the complexity of royal finance. Unlike a personal bank account where the account holder can freely spend their money, the royal trust operates more like a company's budget or a government grant. Every pound is earmarked. Spending it outside of its designated purpose is not just frowned upon. It is a serious breach of protocol. And while the monarchy is famously opaque in many ways, financial mismanagement or misuse would not go unnoticed forever. Auditors exist precisely to prevent this. But what happens when the person handling the money is determined to bend the rules? That's where the alleged story of Harry and Meghan begins. At its core, the issue is deceptively simple. The royal trust money is intended for public duties. Meghan's media projects were private ventures. The separation seems clear on paper, yet the alleged transactions suggest a more complex reality. Documents reportedly reveal that millions earmarked for official engagements may have been quietly redirected, acting as a silent sponsor for Meghan's career ambitions. If true, the implications are staggering, not just financially, but institutionally. This isn't just a matter of bookkeeping. It's about trust, accountability, and the very perception of the monarchy. Consider this. Prince Harry is not just any royal. He is one of the most visible members of the family, with enormous public attention on every move. He is also someone who has consistently expressed a desire to carve his own path, separate from the strictures of traditional royal life. This desire for independence may have created both opportunity and temptation. The funds were there, under his stewardship, to be used for ceremonial purposes. Yet, the records suggest that some of that money may have been quietly reallocated to projects that would benefit him and Meghan personally. The question is not just about legality. It is about ethics, trust, and the subtle but powerful influence of ambition. Let's break down what restricted royal funds actually mean. These funds are controlled, monitored, and designated specifically for the execution of royal responsibilities. They are not discretionary. They are tied to duty. For example, paying for security at official events, travel for state visits, staff salaries for those assisting in royal work, or maintaining residences used for public engagement. All of these are legitimate expenses. There is no room for private business ventures under these allocations. Redirecting funds from these purposes to private projects, even under the guise of support or independence, violates both the letter and spirit of the trust. So, why would anyone consider bending the rules? The answer lies in a combination of opportunity, influence, and personal ambition. Prince Harry, by virtue of his position, had both access and control. He could authorize expenditures, approve budgets, and oversee financial allocations. The alleged evidence suggests that he used this control not to enrich himself in obvious ways, but to quietly fund projects that were ostensibly Meghan's. The beauty and the danger of such a scheme lies in its subtlety. No one could point directly to embezzlement in the traditional sense, because the money was technically still in service of someone perceived as acting under royal authority. Yet the intent and the destination of the funds tell a very different story. This is where the drama intensifies. If the funds were indeed redirected, it would have required careful planning and coordination. We are talking about internal advisors, financial managers, and possibly external agents being involved, knowingly or unknowingly. in a process that could ultimately be construed as misappropriation. The palace has mechanisms to prevent this, from audits to internal checks. So either these mechanisms failed, were circumvented, or were blind to the subtle ways in which money was moved. Each possibility opens up a host of questions about accountability and oversight. The alleged redirection of funds also carries a symbolic weight. Money in the royal trust is not just functional, it is emblematic. It represents public trust, centuries of tradition, and the expectation that those entrusted with it will act with integrity. Using that money for private projects, no matter how lucrative or justified in personal terms, undermines that symbolism. It is not just a financial issue. It is a breach of the implicit contract between the royals and the public. And in the age of instantaneous media scrutiny, even the appearance of impropriety can be as damaging as actual wrongdoing. And then there is the psychological dimension. Consider the mindset of someone in Harry's position, a prince, constantly under media scrutiny, navigating the pressures of public duty while also desiring personal freedom and creative independence. The temptation to leverage accessible resources to support those ambitions must have been immense. The alleged records suggest that he may have succumbed to that temptation, rationalizing the redirection of funds as necessary support for his family's future. Yet, this is where the lines blur. Intention does not erase impact. Using public funds to support private projects, regardless of justification, carries consequences, both legal and reputational. Furthermore, the timing adds another layer of intrigue. The alleged financial activity coincides with Harry and Meghan's gradual departure from royal duties, their so-called step back from the monarchy. On one hand, this move was publicly framed as a bid for independence, a desire to live life on their own terms. On the other, the records suggest a financial undercurrent that may have quietly facilitated that independence. If millions of pounds from royal funds helped bankroll Meghan's media ventures, it complicates the narrative of stepping away from royalty for financial freedom. Instead, it paints a picture of strategic maneuvering, using available resources to ensure the success of private ambitions. The complexity of the situation is further heightened by the secrecy involved. Royal finances are notoriously opaque, and the mechanisms for oversight are intricate. This makes the alleged misallocation difficult to detect and even more difficult to prove definitively without access to internal records. And yet, the very existence of these allegations, coupled with the purported whistleblower documents, creates a storm of suspicion and speculation. The public is left wondering, how much truth lies beneath the headlines? And how deeply does this alleged financial redirection run? Consider the potential consequences. If true, the allegations would not only damage Harry and Meghan's reputations, but could also create tension within the royal family. Questions of trust, loyalty, and propriety would inevitably arise. Advisors, accountants, and other insiders may face scrutiny, as would anyone who was aware of, or complicit in, the alleged transactions. The ripple effects extend beyond the immediate family, impacting public perception of the monarchy as a whole. And yet, amid all this, the human story remains central. At its core, this is not just about money. It is about choices, ambition, and the complex interplay between personal desires and institutional expectations. It is about a young prince navigating the extraordinary pressures of life in the public eye, a wife with career aspirations, and the mechanisms of an ancient institution trying to maintain control over its finances and reputation. The stakes are enormous, the pressures relentless, and the consequences potentially irreversible. But what makes the story truly compelling is the shadow of secrecy that hangs over it. These alleged financial moves were not carried out openly. They were, according to insiders, deliberate, calculated, and hidden. That secrecy is what transforms a financial story into a dramatic exposé. It is the element of hidden action, the deliberate redirection of funds from public duty to private ambition, that electrifies the narrative. And just when you think you have grasped the gravity of the situation, another question emerges. If the trust funds were used in this way, what else might be hidden behind closed palace doors? Are there other projects, other ventures, other maneuvers that the public has yet to discover? The royal trust, so meticulously monitored, may hold more secrets than anyone realizes. And if these allegations are true, they are only the beginning of a story that promises to challenge assumptions, provoke outrage, and captivate audiences worldwide. From Hollywood red carpets to royal palaces, Meghan Markle has always lived in the spotlight. But behind the glamour, behind the poised public persona, lies a story of ambition and strategic planning that few have fully understood. For those following her career closely, Meghan's trajectory, from actress to humanitarian advocate to media entrepreneur, seems like a natural evolution. Yet, when placed alongside the recent allegations of secret funding from royal trust money, a more complex and provocative narrative emerges, one that raises profound questions about the intersection of personal ambition, influence, and the extraordinary resources available to her and Prince Harry. Meghan's media ambitions have been well documented. She has always expressed a desire to create content that tells stories with impact, to amplify voices that are often unheard, and to influence cultural conversations in meaningful ways. From documentaries and television projects to speaking engagements and partnerships with streaming platforms, her portfolio reflects a carefully curated vision of influence and reach. But what has remained opaque until now is how these projects were funded, developed, and pitched behind the scenes. According to recent allegations, the same royal funds that were meant to support ceremonial duties may have played a hidden role in bringing these media initiatives to life. The story begins with her early post-royal projects, such as documentaries and lifestyle content for streaming platforms. Publicly, Meghan framed these ventures as extensions of her advocacy work, highlighting themes of education, equality, and social impact. The messaging resonated widely, presenting her as a socially conscious entrepreneur and thought leader. But insiders suggest that the funding infrastructure behind these projects was far more intricate than the public realized. Allegedly, Prince Harry used access to royal funds to quietly support these initiatives, providing financial backing that allowed Meghan to approach streaming platforms with fully funded pitches rather than tentative proposals. It is important to understand the scale of what is being alleged. The sums in question are not trivial. Millions of pounds, according to whistleblower accounts, were redirected in ways that gave Meghan significant leverage in negotiating deals, hiring teams, and developing content. These were not small personal expenditures. They were substantial investments in a private media enterprise. The ability to walk into boardrooms with guaranteed financial support dramatically alters the dynamics of these negotiations, making it possible to secure higher-profile projects and more lucrative terms than might otherwise have been achievable. Consider the optics of this arrangement. From an outsider's perspective, Meghan appears to be a media entrepreneur building her career independently after stepping back from royal duties. The narrative is empowering, inspiring even. A woman using her platform to create meaningful content while supporting her family. But the alleged behind-the-scenes financial support complicates that story. It raises questions about transparency, fairness, and the degree to which the couple leveraged public resources for private gain. To many observers, this represents a tension between perception and reality, a gap that, if fully exposed, could redefine public understanding of Meghan's post-royal trajectory. The ambitious nature of Meghan's projects also speaks to her strategic vision. Unlike casual celebrity endeavors, these initiatives were carefully targeted to streaming platforms, aiming to capture audiences in areas of social relevance and cultural significance. This was not merely about producing content for entertainment. It was about creating a brand, a media identity, and a platform with long-term influence. The alleged involvement of royal funds provided a cushion, a kind of financial safety net that made it possible to pursue higher-risk projects with the confidence that resources were secured behind the scenes. Furthermore, Meghan's media ambitions intersected with global trends in content consumption. Streaming platforms were rapidly expanding their demand for original content, and high-profile figures with visibility and influence were highly desirable partners. By positioning herself in this space with projects fully funded or partially funded through discrete financial channels, Meghan potentially gained a competitive advantage over others in the industry who lacked such backing. The combination of celebrity, royal association, and financial leverage is formidable, and it magnifies the stakes of the allegations significantly. the alleged funding also suggests a level of strategic planning that is rarely visible to the public. It wasn't just about producing a single documentary or show. It was about creating a portfolio of projects, each reinforcing the other, and each positioned to expand her influence while maintaining alignment with her public persona. This level of coordination implies careful foresight, a clear understanding of market dynamics, and a willingness to take advantage of available resources that, according to the whistleblower reports, were meant for entirely different purposes. And then there's the element of secrecy. If these funds were indeed used as alleged, every financial maneuver would have required discretion. Documents would need to be carefully managed, meetings kept off the public record, and communications handled in ways that concealed the origin of the funding. This is where the narrative moves from a straightforward career story into something more like a thriller. We are not merely talking about media projects. We are talking about a web of covert financial activity, a labyrinth of hidden transactions, and a delicate dance designed to avoid detection. The implications extend beyond money. Using funds meant for royal duties to advance private projects has ramifications for trust, accountability, and reputation. For Prince Harry, it raises questions about stewardship, ethics, and the responsibility that comes with access to extraordinary resources. For Meghan, it complicates the narrative of self-made success and independent entrepreneurship. And for the royal family as an institution, it presents the potential for embarrassment, scrutiny, and a challenge to public confidence in their financial integrity. Public perception is particularly potent in this story. Meghan has been a polarizing figure, admired by some and criticized by others. Every action, from public appearances to charitable initiatives, has been scrutinized through a lens that is both unforgiving and intensely personal. Allegations that she may have benefited from redirected royal funds, whether true or exaggerated, add a new dimension to the public discourse. They force audiences to reconsider assumptions about independence, privilege, and the nature of ambition within the unique context of the royal family. It's also worth noting the potential psychological dimensions of these ambitions. The pressures of stepping back from royal life, combined with the desire to succeed in highly competitive media industries, may have created an environment in which leveraging available resources felt not just advantageous, but necessary. From this perspective, the alleged funding could be seen as both a tool and a lifeline. A means to secure a foothold in a world where visibility, credibility, and financial backing are essential to success. But ambition alone does not create controversy. It is the combination of ambition and alleged funding mechanisms that drives this narrative into the realm of scandal. Reports suggest that Harry's involvement was discreet but pivotal, allowing Meghan to operate in ways that may not have been possible without the financial safety net provided by royal funds. The sheer audacity of such a maneuver, if true, raises questions not only about personal ethics, but also about the structural vulnerabilities within the monarchy's financial oversight. The allegations also intersect with questions of timing and strategy. Meghan and Harry's media projects were initiated during a period of transition, as they redefined their roles outside of traditional royal duties. The use of financial resources from the royal trust, if verified, would suggest a calculated approach, leveraging access to ensure the couple's projects could launch with momentum and credibility. It transforms the narrative from one of casual entrepreneurial effort to one of strategic planning executed with precision. Consider the broader consequences. Beyond the immediate parties, the alleged funding raises questions about fairness in the media industry. How many independent creators, lacking such resources, are competing against well-funded projects backed by extraordinary privilege? How does this impact perceptions of merit, opportunity, and influence? These are not abstract questions. They speak directly to debates about equity, access, and power in contemporary culture. Moreover, the alleged financial support has implications for ongoing scrutiny by both the public and the media. In an era where transparency is increasingly demanded of public figures, even the perception of misused funds can generate significant backlash. Every decision, every project, every financial move becomes a point of potential controversy. For Meghan, the stakes are amplified by her visibility, her past controversies, and the intense public interest in her and Harry's post-royal life. The human drama at the heart of this story cannot be overstated. Here is a couple navigating a global stage, balancing personal ambition with public expectation and allegedly leveraging extraordinary resources in ways that challenge traditional norms. It is a tale of strategy, risk, and consequence, played out under the unrelenting scrutiny of a global audience. Every decision carries weight, every move is analyzed, and every revelation has the potential to alter perception in profound ways. And just when it seems the story is fully understood, another layer emerges. The alleged financial backing, the strategic planning, the secrecy, all point to a narrative that is far from simple. It is a story of ambition intertwined with privilege, of opportunity leveraged in ways that blur ethical lines, and of a couple whose public image may be at odds with the hidden mechanisms that facilitated their rise. In the world of high society, where polo fields meet private jets and charity galas blend seamlessly with luxury lifestyle, a name few expected to make headlines suddenly emerged: Nacho Figueras. Known primarily as a polo champion, model, and socialite, Figueras is no stranger to the media spotlight. But according to recent reports, he has become an unlikely figure in one of the most explosive royal controversies in recent memory. Allegedly, he uncovered financial records indicating that Prince Harry may have used restricted royal trust money to privately fund Meghan Markle's media ventures. The revelation sent shockwaves through palace circles, the press, and the public imagination, raising questions that no one could ignore. The whistleblower narrative is central to this chapter because it provides the thread connecting allegations to tangible evidence. Figueras, in this story, is portrayed not as a tabloid gossip, but as a credible insider with access to information that others might overlook. Allegedly, he came across documents, communications, and accounting details that revealed unusual transactions, funds earmarked for official duties being redirected toward private media projects. For those accustomed to the secrecy surrounding the royal family, the very existence of such records is extraordinary and deeply troubling. To understand the significance of Figueras' alleged revelations, one must first grasp the magnitude of the evidence he purportedly uncovered. Reports suggest that these were not casual mentions or speculative notes. They were financial statements, transfer records, and internal memos. The kinds of documents that, in a corporate setting, would trigger audits, compliance reviews, and potentially legal action. If authentic, they could serve as a roadmap showing the flow of funds from royal trusts directly into private projects, creating a link between the monarchy's resources and Meghan's growing media empire. What makes this story particularly compelling is the human element behind the paperwork. Figueras reportedly did not stumble upon the records by accident. Sources suggest that his role as an insider allowed him to observe patterns, notice anomalies, and piece together a narrative that might otherwise have remained hidden. This is not just about numbers on a page. It is about the interpretation of those numbers, the context in which transactions occurred, and the implications they carry for individuals at the highest levels of society. The whistleblower angle adds layers of tension and intrigue. Leaking sensitive information about the royal family is not a trivial matter. The potential consequences are enormous: legal repercussions, media scrutiny, and intense personal risk. Figueras' alleged decision to step forward, or at least to allow information to surface, signals the gravity of what he witnessed. It suggests that the anomalies he uncovered were significant enough to warrant action, despite the potential fallout. In examining the alleged records, several patterns emerge. First, the sheer scale of the transactions is startling. Millions of pounds, according to whistleblower reports, were funneled into ventures that, on the surface, had no connection to royal duties. This alone is enough to provoke questions about oversight, accountability, and the ethical responsibilities of those entrusted with public funds. Second, the timing aligns with the period when Harry and Meghan were transitioning out of their formal royal roles, suggesting strategic intent behind the funding choices. One of the most compelling aspects of this narrative is the subtlety of the alleged financial maneuvering. It was not as though funds were simply withdrawn in large sums and handed over with fanfare. Instead, the transactions were reportedly carefully structured, moving through legitimate channels in ways that might have avoided immediate detection. This level of sophistication suggests premeditation and a keen understanding of the constraints imposed by royal financial protocols. The whistleblower documents, as described, also reveal interactions with intermediaries. Advisors, accountants, and executives at production companies allegedly facilitated the transfers, knowingly or unknowingly contributing to the flow of funds from royal trusts into private projects. The presence of these intermediaries adds complexity to the story, creating a network of connections that must be navigated carefully. Each link in this chain raises questions. Did these individuals know the true source of the funding? Were they complicit, or were they unwitting participants in a carefully orchestrated plan? Direct questions to the audience become unavoidable at this point. If you were in the position of an advisor or executive, would you question the origin of the funds? Would you challenge someone with royal authority, knowing the consequences could be immense? These questions underscore the tension between personal ethics, professional responsibility, and the weight of hierarchical influence. In the world of royalty, social pressure and deference to authority can complicate even the clearest moral judgments. Figueras' alleged role also introduces an element of credibility. Unlike anonymous leaks or speculative reporting, having a named insider lends a measure of authenticity to the story. While the documents themselves are the primary evidence, the fact that someone with established social and professional standing is associated with their disclosure strengthens the narrative. It suggests that these revelations are not mere rumor or conjecture. They are rooted in observations made by someone positioned to understand both the transactions and their broader significance. The psychological stakes for those involved cannot be underestimated. For Harry and Meghan, the existence of such whistleblower revelations introduces uncertainty, risk, and potential exposure. Every financial decision, every project launched, and every public statement now exists under the shadow of scrutiny. For Figueras, stepping into the role of whistleblower, whether fully public or behind the scenes, carries the risk of social backlash, legal entanglement, and personal stress. The human dimension of this story adds an intense layer of drama to the factual and financial narrative. Another compelling aspect is the broader systemic implication. If the allegations are true, they reveal vulnerabilities in the royal financial system that allowed funds to be redirected with limited oversight. Auditors and stewards exist to prevent misuse of resources, but the alleged records suggest that even a tightly monitored system can be circumvented when access, influence, and discretion are combined strategically. This challenges assumptions about accountability and raises questions about how such powerful institutions manage internal controls. And yet, even with these revelations, the story is not straightforward. Figueras' disclosures, while explosive, raise as many questions as they answer. Were these actions deliberate or opportunistic? Was there tacit approval from others within the royal family? Or was this a unilateral decision? How much of the financial support directly benefited Meghan's projects? And how much, if any, was invested elsewhere? These uncertainties fuel speculation and amplify the intrigue, making it clear that the narrative is far from complete. The whistleblower aspect also forces a confrontation with public perception. The royal family, long accustomed to media scrutiny, now faces the added dimension of insider testimony. The public is no longer just observing from the outside. They are being invited into the mechanics of transactions and decision-making. This creates a dynamic tension. The story is simultaneously about money, ethics, ambition, and human relationships, and the revelations from Figueras serve as a key lens through which the world can interpret the events. Moreover, the alleged findings suggest a level of sophistication in planning and execution that is both impressive and alarming. Coordinating the flow of millions of pounds, maintaining secrecy, and navigating the intricate web of royal finance requires not only access, but also strategic thinking. This is not casual mismanagement. It is alleged deliberate orchestration, a careful balancing act that could easily have unraveled at any moment. The very existence of whistleblower documentation implies that while the operation may have been hidden, it was never entirely invisible. At this juncture, one cannot ignore the emotional and ethical stakes. The allegations, if accurate, suggest a breach of trust not only with advisors, auditors, and intermediaries, but also with the public, who ultimately funds and supports the monarchy through taxation and donations. It is a story about privilege leveraged in secret, about influence exercised quietly, and about the human consequences of actions taken behind closed doors. The tension is palpable. The closer the world looks, the more questions emerge, and the more the narrative demands scrutiny, debate, and reflection. And just when it feels like the story has reached a tipping point, another revelation is hinted at within the whistleblower records, one that could dramatically change the public's understanding of the scope and intent of these financial maneuvers. The implications are not limited to a single project or a single transaction. They ripple outward, threatening to reshape narratives, perceptions, and the relationships at the highest levels of the royal family. Money has a way of telling the truth that words often cannot. The ledgers, the spreadsheets, the carefully archived receipts, they speak in black and white, leaving little room for subjective interpretation. And in the case of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the numbers allegedly exposed by whistleblower Nacho Figueras tell a story that is both compelling and controversial. According to reports, these financial records reveal transactions that suggest royal funds. Money earmarked strictly for ceremonial duties may have been redirected to privately support Meghan's media ventures. The sums involved, the timing, and the structure of these alleged transfers have ignited a firestorm of speculation, analysis, and outrage, making the numbers themselves a central character in this unfolding saga. Let's begin with the scale of the alleged redirection. Reports suggest that millions of pounds were involved. Not casual or incidental amounts, but substantial sums that, under normal circumstances, would have been reserved for official travel, staffing, security, and public engagements. These are funds meticulously monitored for compliance, allocated with the expectation that every transaction is accounted for in service of royal duties. The implication that these resources were quietly diverted to private projects introduces a level of audacity that is almost cinematic. To understand the gravity, consider the mechanics of royal funding. Money flows through various accounts and trusts, each designated for specific purposes. Restricted funds, by definition, cannot be used for personal projects. They are controlled by auditors, advisors, and stewards who ensure compliance with long-standing protocols. Yet, the alleged records indicate transactions that skirted these restrictions. Whether through subtle transfers, budget reallocations, or strategic approvals, funds appear to have been redirected toward Meghan's media ambitions in ways that may not have been immediately visible to oversight authorities. What is striking about the alleged numbers is not just the volume, but the precision with which they were allegedly managed. Reports suggest that transactions were structured to appear legitimate, moving in ways that would not immediately trigger alarms. This level of financial sophistication points to planning, strategy, and deliberate execution. It is not the work of a casual misstep. It is the work of someone who understands both the mechanics of finance and the expectations of oversight. Breaking down the numbers reveals patterns that are hard to ignore. Certain amounts align suspiciously with major milestones in Meghan's media projects, project launches, negotiations with streaming platforms, and team expansions. The timing, sources claim, was not coincidental. Every spike in expenditure corresponded to an event or a push that advanced Meghan's public ventures. If accurate, the records suggest a direct link between the redirection of funds and the progress of her media career, raising ethical and practical questions about intent and propriety. Consider the perspective of the public or the monarchy itself. For centuries, royal finances have operated under the principle that every pound is tied to duty, service, or charity. Misuse, or perceived misuse, can have consequences that extend beyond the financial realm. Reputation, trust, and credibility are intertwined with fiscal responsibility. The alleged redirection of millions, therefore, is not just about money. It is about perception, trust, and the potential for scandal. But it's not merely about tracing funds. It's about interpreting them. The records allegedly show not random expenses, but calculated disbursements aimed at specific projects. From hiring production teams to funding initial pilot episodes, the numbers suggest a deliberate infusion of resources. This is where the story moves beyond curiosity into serious controversy. We are talking about private projects being bolstered with funds that were never intended for such use. It is a blurring of lines between public duty and personal ambition, and the implications are profound. The alleged records also hint at layers of complexity in execution. Transfers were reportedly routed through intermediaries, structured to avoid immediate detection, and justified under vague categories of royal engagement or project support. This sophistication makes the allegations all the more serious, because it implies not mere oversight but a conscious effort to align transactions in a way that might bypass scrutiny. Such arrangements raise questions about accountability, governance, and the vulnerabilities within what is often seen as an ironclad financial system. Direct questions arise. How does one measure the ethicality of such actions? If money meant for public duty is used privately, even subtly, does intent matter? Is this a violation of trust, a creative workaround, or something in between? These are questions that the royal family and the public must grapple with, particularly as more details allegedly surface. One particularly intriguing aspect of the numbers is their consistency with Meghan's known ambitions. It's not just random spending. It appears targeted and strategic. Every major phase of her media initiatives, every key negotiation, and every production milestone seems to correspond with financial movements in the records. For analysts and observers, this alignment paints a picture of intentional support, a financial scaffolding that helped turn ambition into tangible projects. The implications extend to accountability. Advisors, auditors, and intermediaries all play roles in monitoring these funds. The alleged records suggest that either these figures were unaware of the ultimate destination of the money, or that the transactions were sophisticated enough to evade immediate detection. Either scenario introduces tension and risk. Failure in oversight or deliberate circumvention both carry consequences. Moreover, the public response cannot be understated. The numbers, when presented in media reports, spark outrage, curiosity, and debate. They force audiences to confront uncomfortable questions about privilege, ethics, and transparency. The financial magnitude of the alleged redirection transforms a story that might otherwise be personal or anecdotal into a matter of public concern. Millions of pounds, meant for royal duties, possibly funding private ventures. That is the core tension at the heart of this narrative. And yet, the numbers alone do not tell the whole story. They need context, interpretation, and insight into human behavior. Why were these funds redirected? Was it out of ambition, necessity, or opportunity? Did Prince Harry see this as a form of support for his wife's career, or as a way to secure independence from royal oversight? Each possibility carries ethical weight, and each opens avenues for speculation and analysis. The alleged financial trail also raises questions about proportionality. How much of the funds were actually used for private projects? Were they substantial enough to materially alter the trajectory of Meghan's career, or symbolic gestures that facilitated early-stage development? Understanding the scale is critical because it frames both public perception and potential legal or institutional consequences. Finally, the numbers set the stage for the next chapter in this unfolding saga. They are the foundation for understanding the alleged methods used to pitch deals to streaming platforms, the strategies behind Meghan's media expansion, and the broader implications for royal accountability. They provide the empirical backbone to claims that would otherwise be dismissed as rumor or speculation. And they do so with a precision and clarity that words alone cannot convey. But just when it seems the financial story is clear, another detail emerges. One transaction so unusual, so meticulously executed, that it could change everything we thought we understood about this alleged scheme. In the world of high-stakes media, deals are everything. The right pitch can transform an idea into a global phenomenon. The wrong approach can leave even the most promising projects dead on arrival. For Meghan Markle, her ambition to create meaningful, high-profile media content required not just vision and creativity, but also leverage. Leverage that, according to recent allegations, may have been quietly provided by Prince Harry using restricted royal funds. The way these deals were pitched, structured, and presented to streaming platforms has become one of the most scrutinized aspects of the unfolding financial controversy, revealing a hidden layer of strategy and influence that few anticipated. Imagine walking into a room full of executives at a major streaming platform. You're not just an independent producer or celebrity hoping to get noticed. You're part of a globally recognized power couple with access to millions of pounds, allegedly behind the scenes, ready to fund the project. The dynamics of such a pitch are drastically different from the typical negotiation process. Confidence is amplified by financial backing. Proposals that might otherwise be tentative become compelling because the money is already in place. If the allegations are true, this was precisely the advantage Meghan enjoyed, a financial safety net that few independent creators could ever dream of. The mechanics of these pitches, as described by insiders, were sophisticated. Rather than appearing as personal projects seeking external funding, these initiatives were presented as fully backed and ready for production. Teams were in place, budgets outlined, and timelines meticulously mapped. For streaming executives, the package was irresistible, a high-profile figure with a clear vision, a ready-to-go team, and secured financial resources that allegedly originated from royal funds. The advantage of this positioning is enormous, and it raises questions about fairness and transparency in the industry. According to reports, some of these deals involved multi-million-pound budgets for documentaries, series, and branded content. The funding covered everything from research and production to marketing and talent acquisition. The breadth of these investments demonstrates a level of preparation and ambition that far exceeds typical celebrity projects. If the allegations hold true, it means that public funds, intended for royal duties, may have been redirected to create a competitive edge in a highly lucrative media market. This alleged strategy required careful planning and discretion. Royal funds are not easily accessible, and any misuse carries serious risk. The structuring of these pitches had to ensure that the funding appeared legitimate and that the origins of money did not raise immediate red flags. Reports suggest that intermediaries, advisors, and executives may have been involved, either knowingly or unwittingly, in facilitating the flow of money from royal trusts into private media projects. Each transaction, each approval, each communication was a potential point of exposure, and yet the system reportedly operated with remarkable secrecy. The timing of these pitches also matters. Many occurred during the period when Harry and Meghan were transitioning out of formal royal duties, a time when public attention was intense and scrutiny heightened. Presenting projects with guaranteed funding allowed Meghan to bypass typical hurdles faced by creators without financial backing, enabling her to secure higher-profile deals more quickly. This created a perception of seamless success while masking the alleged behind-the-scenes financial scaffolding that made it possible. Another dimension to consider is the psychological impact of these pitches. For executives, knowing that a project is backed by significant resources can influence decision-making. Confidence grows, risk perception diminishes, and negotiations become less adversarial. If the allegations regarding royal funding are accurate, Meghan's team may have had a strategic advantage in shaping deal terms, timelines, and production decisions, all while maintaining the appearance of independence and self-made success. Moreover, the alleged structure of these pitches highlights the subtlety of influence. The funds reportedly did not appear as overt gifts or direct transfers. They were embedded in the production budgets, carefully allocated to cover specific expenses. This method of integration allowed the projects to appear self-sufficient, with money flowing quietly in the background. For those on the outside, the process looked like a standard negotiation between high-profile talent and streaming platforms. But the alleged financial mechanics tell a different story. Ethical questions inevitably arise. Even if the projects were legitimate and the content valuable, the source of funding matters. Using money intended for public duty to secure private deals challenges the notions of transparency and accountability. It is not just about whether the content succeeded. It is about whether the means of achieving that success were appropriate and lawful. The potential breach of trust extends beyond the monarchy to the media industry itself, raising concerns about fairness, integrity, and influence. The alleged involvement of intermediaries adds further intrigue. Production companies, advisors, and even legal teams may have been part of the process, facilitating the flow of funds, managing budgets, and ensuring that deals were executed without triggering scrutiny. Whether these parties were aware of the true origins of the money is unclear, but their participation underscores the complexity of the operation. The network of actors required to orchestrate these pitches reflects the sophistication of the alleged scheme, suggesting premeditation and careful coordination. Direct questions to the audience arise naturally. If you were a streaming executive, would you investigate the source of funds if the offer seemed too good to be true? Would you question a highly respected figure leveraging their influence, or accept the proposal at face value? These questions highlight the tension between perception and reality, between trust and due diligence, and between ambition and ethical responsibility. The stakes were amplified by the public profile of the couple. Every deal pitched, every project announced, was observed through the lens of global media. Public scrutiny added pressure, but also provided cover. The visibility and credibility of the couple made the project seem legitimate and desirable. For insiders, the combination of high-profile celebrity, financial backing, and public interest created a dynamic where the line between independence and reliance on royal resources blurred. In examining these alleged pitches, another layer emerges: the potential strategic advantage gained from secrecy. By keeping the source of funds hidden, Meghan's team could operate as if fully independent, gaining credibility in the media industry while enjoying the financial support of an extraordinary hidden backer. This duality, public independence, private support, enhanced the appeal of the projects while shielding them from criticism, at least temporarily. And yet, the very secrecy that provided advantage also introduced risk. The moment the alleged funding came to light, the narrative shifted from creative entrepreneurship to potential misuse of public funds. Each pitch, once lauded as a strategic masterstroke, became evidence in a complex story of privilege, influence, and alleged impropriety. The tension between perceived success and the hidden mechanics of funding is what drives the drama and keeps audiences captivated. The alleged way these deals were pitched also underscores a broader point about power and opportunity. Access to resources, visibility, and influence creates possibilities that others cannot match. The combination of royal association and financial backing, if verified, provided Meghan with an unparalleled platform to launch her media ambitions, highlighting the intersection of privilege, strategy, and ambition in ways that few outside the inner circle could fully understand. And just when it seemed the mechanisms of these deals had been fully revealed, another twist emerged. One particular pitch, executed with extraordinary precision, included a financial arrangement so unexpected, so meticulously orchestrated, that it could change the understanding of the entire process. The records indicate a level of planning that goes beyond ordinary negotiation, suggesting that the alleged involvement of royal funds was both intentional and integral to the project's success. When the alleged financial backing behind Meghan Markle's media projects began to surface, the response from streaming platforms, Netflix, Amazon, Apple TV, and others, was swift, cautious, and telling. In the world of high-profile content, streaming giants operate under a delicate balance. They crave star power, exclusive content, and marketable stories, yet they also must navigate legal, ethical, and reputational risks. According to insider accounts, the revelation that royal funds may have secretly financed Meghan's projects sent shockwaves behind closed doors, forcing executives to reevaluate contracts, financial oversight, and even the optics of their partnerships. Imagine being an executive at one of these companies. You've greenlit a major series or documentary featuring one of the world's most famous couples, attracted by their charisma, public appeal, and the promise of high viewership. The production seems legitimate, the content compelling, and the financial risk manageable, or so it appears. Then whispers begin to circulate. The funds supporting the project may not have come from conventional private sources. They may have originated from restricted royal funds, money intended for official duties, redirected quietly to support a private media venture. The implications are immediate and profound. First, there's the legal dimension. Contracts with high-profile talent typically include clauses about the source of funding, transparency, and compliance with applicable laws. If money intended for public or ceremonial purposes is involved, even indirectly, it raises questions about the legality of transactions, fiduciary responsibility, and contractual obligations. Legal teams within these platforms reportedly scrambled to examine documentation, verify sources, and assess potential liability. Every email, invoice, and transfer record suddenly mattered in ways they had not before. Next comes the reputational risk. Streaming platforms thrive on credibility, trust, and the ability to market content as ethically produced. The possibility that a series or film was partially funded through misappropriated public funds could become a PR nightmare. The platforms would need to consider public perception. How would audiences react if they learned the alleged truth? Could viewers enjoy a program knowing that its production may have been financed through funds not intended for private use? These questions reportedly prompted internal meetings, risk assessments, and strategic discussions at the highest levels. According to insider reports, some executives were initially skeptical. "It sounds too outrageous to be true," one source allegedly said. After all, royal finances are notoriously opaque, and the notion that funds earmarked for ceremonial duties could be quietly redirected seemed almost cinematic. Yet as documentation and whistleblower accounts began to emerge, skepticism turned into concern. If even